Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Touchline Talk with Odds Changer and SBK. As usual, I'm joined by the one and only football writer and broadcaster Dean Jones to discuss all the latest news and gossip from the world of football. Hi Dean, the international break is finally over. England have qualified for the World Cup. Scotland and Wales have booked their place in the playoffs, hoping to join England at next November's World Cup. I was going to say next summer's there in Qatar. So the good news is no more international football or breaks until March, so we can now focus on the Premier League and all the other leagues across Europe. Obviously, it was a busy one during the international break as well. We saw Steven Gerrard left Rangers to return to the Premier League with Aston Villa, opening up a vacancy at Ibrox. Rangers have turned towards their former player Giovanni van Bronckhorst to replace Gerrard. Obviously, he's got Rangers links there. He used to be a player for the Scottish Giants. 3 seasons he had at the club, successful as well during his time up in Glasgow as well. He's got a tough act to follow in Gerrard, though. Do you think Van Bronckhorst is the right man to take Rangers forward?
I mean, I think they're hitting this right kind of profile. And I was told, when the speculation began about Gerrard and I was trying to find out whether there was any legs in him actually going to Villa, one of the first things I found out was that Rangers weren't going to stand in his way if Gerrard made it clear to them that he wanted to leave. And as part of that, one of the things I was told was that Ross Wilson, the sporting director, was pretty excited about the prospect of going out and finding the man that would carry on from him. Now, that doesn't mean we didn't want Gerrard to leave, but he was looking forward to the chance to make an appointment that could carry on the momentum and the good work that had gone up to this point, and was confident that the club could do that. I think from the initial talks that they had with a few candidates, Van Bronckhorst very quickly became the man that they were going to narrow in on. Obviously, links to the club, player 20-odd years ago. So, there'll be generations that don't remember that, obviously. But I think it does help. I think that, having a connection to a club when you're going to it of that size is definitely of an importance, especially as there will be supporters within inside the stadium that will have that connection to you. I think clearly beyond that, though, there'll be a philosophy and a style which is going to be continued under Van Bronckhorst, and they'll want to have made sure that certain things that Gerrard have put in place aren't going to disappear overnight. Now, Van Bronckhorst has not had a long career as a coach, but from what he's done so far, he's well regarded, and he's got big ambitions in the game. I think that this isn't necessarily a platform for him to go on and do something like Gerrard's done, but it is in a way, because he'd have seen the success that Gerrard brought to Rangers. He would have seen the profile of job that he's now got onto in the Premier League. Van Bronckhorst has talked before about the fact, I think, that he'd quite like the Arsenal job one day. Like a job like that would be the ultimate goal. And having a club like Rangers to provide him with the next kind of stage of his managerial career is perfect for him, I think, and he'll relish a challenge.
Yeah, not sure Rangers fans will be too happy with you with maybe talking about their possible manager heading down to England just like Gerrard has. But yeah, it's going to be the ambition, I think, for Van Bronckhorst to test himself at the highest level. He did quite well in Holland with Feyenoord, winning the Cup and the League before a spell in China. But the interesting thing for me is he's worked under some top managers in his career, Arsene Wenger at Arsenal, Dick Advocaat at Rangers as well. And he has spent time working with the City Group, studying Pep Guardiola. So that must be exciting for Rangers fans to see what he could bring to the table.
Yeah, and as a result of that, really, that he's going to have high ambition in the game, and that Rangers isn't going to be the club that he spends the rest of his managerial career at. That's kind of all I mean by that. I think that he'll go in there with a real vision to just build on last season, because, it's all very well winning the league once, but like to produce an era of it is how you really go down as a legend. And once you have that status, like that's there forever and you're idolized and you can do no wrong, right, in the eyes of these people that are behind you. And that's got to be the dream when you go into a club of this size and this stature. And I think he'll really enjoy it. But yeah, he's worked under some good people that he's taken ideas from, and it's going to be a great watch now. I think we're in for a good title race.
Yeah, talking of that, it's going to be a real tough job now as well for Van Bronckhorst. It seems we've got a renewed Celtic this season under Ange Postecoglou. We could have a real title challenge up in Scotland, as Rangers really ran away with it last year. Just 4 points separating them. So the mission will be to retain that title for Van Bronckhorst.
Yeah, and in a way, for Gerrard to leave right now, like he's left on a high. Like, who knows how the season could have ended up? I mean, it's definitely feasible that Celtic could win the league this year. And if that would have happened and Gerrard was still there, then you go into next year and you're like, well, you start to question Gerrard's credentials a bit. But as it is, he's got out on a high. And now Van Bronckhorst has really got a really tricky job of maintaining the expectation level, which is to go and win the league again. And who knows whether Gerrard would have done that. I mean, obviously he was in a good position to do that. We don't know, there's so far left of the season. So it is a very difficult job, but one I'm sure he's more than capable of. And I think that the fact that the board narrowed in on him so quickly shows that they're in no doubt that he's the man to do it.
Yeah, it looks like an astute appointment by the Rangers board to get Van Bronckhorst in. And one thing for sure is it looks like we're in for an exciting second half of the season in the Scottish Premiership title race, with Rangers and Celtic going head-to-head to try and win that title. One man who was linked with the Rangers job and also the Norwich job before eventually pulling out of that race was Frank Lampard. We talked last week, Dean, that we were surprised that he was favoured for the Norwich job at the time before, as we said, he eventually pulled out, leaving the path clear for Dean Smith to take over at Norwich. What does the future hold for Lampard right now? Because he's had opportunities. There was Crystal Palace links in the summer, also Newcastle once Steve Bruce left his role there as well, and then obviously the Norwich job. Where does Frank Lampard go from here? And is he panicking just yet, or is he hoping to get a job before the end of the season?
Yeah, he's not panicking. From what I understand and what I'm told, he's confident that he'll land a Premier League job before the end of the season. Obviously, he doesn't know what's going to open up and what's going to be there, but when opportunities do come up, he's already seen that he's always considered for these positions. It's been 3 jobs this year that he's been talked about being part of. So he knows that he is regarded in those conversations that happen. I wrote a piece last week about Frank Lampard, and within that piece, I dropped in that he's got a half an eye on Brendan Rodgers' situation at Leicester and what's going on there, and that's the kind of profile of job that would suit him down to the ground, and he would love. Like, since I've written that, look, it's been blown out of proportion a bit, and other people have jumped on it. And I've seen an article today saying how Leicester will line up next season under Frank Lampard. Like that's taken this way beyond what I was talking about at the time. It's just you have conversations with people, and people mention things that have gone on in passing, and it was kind of just a byproduct of the story itself, talking about Lampard having a desire to manage in the Premier League this season, and that's the kind of fit that would suit him. And it makes sense, right? Because you go into Leicester, like if Brendan Rodgers does leave Leicester, that is an amazing job for somebody, not only because of the squad that they've already got, because of the investment and the backing that you're given, the size of the club, the level, the projection that they've still got. Like, it's such a good place for whoever was to go in there after Brendan Rodgers. And I think that's kind of what Lampard has to look for. If he looks for a club that's, say, Norwich City, like massive chance you're still going to be relegated. Newcastle, such high expectation now, nothing but success is going to be accepted. Eddie Howe's got an extremely difficult job on his hands to meet those expectations, even short term. And he's just got to be cautious about the next job he goes into, because, look, Derby, there's still some scepticism from some people about how well he actually did in that job, because when you look back at it as an overall project, he did fine, but it wasn't amazing. Then lands the Chelsea job because he's a club legend. Does well. Does he do amazing? Probably not. Would he have got that job in any other situation? Probably not. You look at the level Chelsea have actually hit since he left, 10 times better. So he's got to be very cautious about taking a job and it not going well. And that's why I think Leicester is that kind of profile. We just seen Steven Gerrard getting that job at Aston Villa, same kind of bracket, So I'd say that middle of the mid to top end of the Premier League is where he's got to aim, because that's where he's used to being as well. It's very hard for people that have spent their entire career as players at the top end of it to drop down and understand the mentality that's needed, the short-term results that are needed. Heard Roy Keane talk about this. He found it very difficult to accept avoiding relegation, because that's not really a success. To him, he's used to winning trophies and he wants to be at the other end of it. Mm-hmm. And I think Lampard will probably have a similar mentality and will need to be tested beyond just staying in a league.
Yeah, I think we all remember what Roy Keane thought of Aston Villa's celebrations when they stayed up on the last day of the season. He wasn't too happy about that.
No.
But yeah, it's 10 months now since Lampard left Chelsea. He's obviously taken his time to take the right job and everything else. But it's all dependent on a domino effect, as you've said, with one eye maybe on that Leicester job, which might become available if Man United were to sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and that would maybe clear the path for Brendan Rodgers to go there. So a lot can happen for that, and that's what Frank Lampard's probably waiting for right now, is for that right opportunity, which seems to have happened for his old England teammate Steven Gerrard and Aston Villa.
Exactly, and that's all it takes. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's obviously got a big test coming up immediately because he needs to ensure that Man United aren't beaten by Villarreal. If they lose to Villarreal, and then they go into that final group game looking to book a place into the last 16, that's huge pressure on that match. And an upset and United failing to make the knockouts would be an absolute disaster. And I think it's going to take a failure of that size for United to part ways with Solskjaer and say, okay, we're drawing a line under this, and that's clear evidence of why he doesn't deserve to be in the job anymore. And they could go with that. Say, look, you didn't make the knockouts of the Champions League. We should have got through that group. I'm afraid you can't continue as the manager anymore. If that happens, and then you start looking for a new manager, for example, if Brendan Rodgers took that job, then Leicester job opens up and there's your opening. It's little things like that, as you say, that do create situations that managers are already keeping an eye on, because there aren't too many obvious ins at the moment.
Yeah, as you said, we've had 5 managerial changes already in this managerial merry-go-round in the Premier League, and I'm sure Frank Lampard sitting at home, or is it Dubai? I think he is at the minute, just chilling out, relaxing, and waiting for the right time to jump on that merry-go-round. So that's one to keep an eye on over the coming weeks and months to see where Frank Lampard does end up. From one former Chelsea midfielder to a current Chelsea midfielder making the headlines for club and country is a young Gallagher, Conor Gallagher, Crystal Palace on loan from Chelsea. Had a great start to the season, which was rewarded with a call-up to the England squad. And he made his debut in midweek in that thumping win over San Marino. Big questions, though. Will Conor Gallagher return to Chelsea next season and get a chance in Thomas Tuchel's side? Or is he thinking, I'm doing so well on loan, I'm playing regularly, maybe I might have to leave Stamford Bridge permanently to keep his career going upwards?
Yeah, look, as it stands, he's going back to Chelsea at the end of the season, and he's been promised opportunity if this goes well, and clearly it is going well at Crystal Palace. And so the message is from Chelsea, like, of course you'll get an opportunity to get in the team for next season. Now, from what I'm told from people around him, there are doubts about that, not because they think Chelsea are going to go back on a promise, but because they're not completely convinced that Chelsea aren't going to be tempted to go back into the transfer market again, because what Chelsea have to do is maintain the level that they're already at, and they are European champions and they're competing for a Premier League title. And of course they would love to bed in some players who have come through the academy, and Conor Gallagher's clearly done brilliantly at Crystal Palace, but to be a consistent player at Chelsea is a completely different challenge, and you'd need that opportunity to be given to you over a period of weeks. You can't just go in there and play the odd game. You have to fit in. So I think there's some concern, from what I'm told, about whether he truly will get the chance to become part of the team. If that's not going to be the case, then I think he would look to leave on loan again, or leave, perhaps permanently if there really is no chance for him, because he's seen what he's capable of, and he's seen like what it's like to feel part of a team and a successful team. But it's all going to be about what happens in June, July, really. And when you go back into that pre-season and you find out, one, how many opportunities you're being given in the strongest starting 11 that's starting those matches, but also what are Chelsea doing in the transfer market? Who are they being linked with? And if it's players that are a bit similar to him, he's going to be like, I thought I was getting a chance. Why are you signing him?
Yeah, it'd be great to know what Conor Gallagher's thoughts are when he does see speculation linking Chelsea with the likes of Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, just to increase midfield competition at Stamford Bridge as well. Chelsea were quite smart in this loan deal. There was no buy option in the deal at Palace, so it means that Palace, as much as they would love to sign Conor Gallagher, no option there to do that right now. But the way Conor Gallagher is going this season, now he's made his England debut, he'll be desperate to ensure that he's playing regular first-team football in the Premier League to try and keep his place in Gareth Southgate's squad going forward. So big decision, not just for Chelsea, but also for Gallagher as well, probably at the end of this loan spell.
Yeah, I think he'd probably be looking at what happened to Jesse Lingard and thinking, well, I can't let that happen. I don't want to stall again. I've got too much momentum. Jesse did so well with West Ham, was the star player. They qualified for Europe. He's like in such a good place. Goes back to Man United, thinks I'm going to have one more crack at this. They say I'm going to get the chance. He's barely featured at all, and now he's going to have to consider his future again in January. Conor Gallagher's going to be in a pretty similar boat to that, and he can't hang around. He can't be sat on a bench for 6 months, just twiddling his thumbs, because he's too good for that, and he's at too fragile a stage of his career. He hasn't played long enough. Jesse Lingard, we've all seen play for a few years and know what he can do over a certain period of time. And Conor Gallagher's obviously very early into his professional career and doing this at Premier League level. So, yeah, he'll have to be very careful about the decision he makes. But obviously, he wants to make it at Chelsea. Like, that is his priority. He wants to do that. He's being told he'll get that chance. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, whatever happens, he's having a great season for Crystal Palace. And as I said, that was rewarded with an England call-up as well. So, yeah, Crystal Palace are benefiting right now. And let's see if Chelsea will benefit next season by putting Conor Gallagher into their starting 11. One player who's likely to dominate headlines in the January transfer window, Dean, and has done for much of the summer and the weeks that have gone since the window closed, is Donny van de Beek at Manchester United. He's very frustrated. The Dutchman just found himself out of favour under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I think he's only played 16 minutes in the Premier League so far this season. Again, he's been linked with moves away from Old Trafford when the window reopens in January. The latest links are Everton, who try to get him in the summer. They might come back in for him. Also, the new mega-rich Newcastle also being sort of mentioned as interested parties in him as well. And Wolves and even Real Madrid, which is a bit of a strange one for me, that they've been linked with Van de Beek. Obviously, we know his pedigree at Ajax. He was one of the best young midfielders in Europe. Hasn't happened for him at Man United. What do you think is going to happen with Van de Beek this January?
It's mind-blowing, to be honest, that he's just sat there twiddling his thumbs and handing the other subs their shirts to put on. It's a ridiculous situation, similar to Jadon Sancho, really. And I think that this is one of the things that you put down as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as mismanagement, really, because at a time when United's midfield is so short of options and seems so flawed, you would imagine Donny van de Beek could fill a role and you could get a tune out of him. And Solskjaer's just not even embracing the challenge of that. So there's no doubt about it that Van de Beek has to consider a transfer in January. I know that that's begun to be activated already, and there are people working on his behalf to find him the right move, which is obviously so important. You mentioned Everton and Newcastle, and look, it's obvious that they're clubs that are going to look to strengthen in the next window. Does it suit him? That's what he's ultimately got to decide. Like, you go to Newcastle, you're scrapping at the rung of the table. Is that the position you want to find yourself in for the last 5 months of the season? Or would you rather go and play at, say, Wolves, if they came in for you? Would you rather go and play and battle from 8th place upwards and push to make a name for yourself in that sense and show that you can do it in the Premier League? The other challenge with Newcastle as well is the fact that there's this very real challenge they face in signing other players from Premier League clubs, because there's kind of like a secret pact gone on that they're not going to help out Newcastle because they don't see why they should. And there's certain figures within the Premier League trying to stop other clubs from helping them. So that means they won't be loaning players to Newcastle, won't be selling players to Newcastle, because they don't particularly want them to survive, because in a year's time, they might be challenging their place among the elite as we move forward. So interesting to see how that opens up and whether that really is a factor. But for Van de Beek, it's got to be right. He's got to correct this and make sure that he's playing football again as soon as possible.
Yeah, he's recently changed agents as well. So that shows he's angling for a move away from Manchester United in January. And as I said, no shortage of takers, I'm sure, for the Dutchman if United are willing to let him go as well. But could that situation change at Old Trafford if Solskjaer loses his job before the transfer window, a new manager comes in, maybe a fresh start for Van de Beek at Old Trafford?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's really true. As I say, unless United get knocked out of the Champions League, I still don't see Solskjaer losing his job in the coming weeks. So there's not much time here that we're talking about. And then who knows, if United do qualify for the knockouts, then it could be that Solskjaer does see out the season. It's quite possible that does happen, and Van de Beek can't really accept that situation.
Yeah, big few months coming up for Donny van de Beek if he wants to get his career back on track after a disappointing time at Manchester United. Another player who faces an uncertain future is Alexandre Lacazette at Arsenal. The Frenchman Kern's contract is up at the end of the season, and there is no sign of a new deal being agreed at the minute. Dean, seems Arsenal are only willing to offer Lacazette a short-term contract because, as I think he turns 31 at the end of the season, and we know Arsenal's policy on giving out long-term contracts to players over 30. Obviously, Lacazette would ideally prefer a longer contract, and in January he is free to open talks with foreign clubs over a possible move away. Is it looking more and more likely that Lacazette will leave Arsenal? Maybe not in January, but definitely in the summer when his contract expires?
Yeah, I mean, in last summer, I was hearing of the club, being open to offers for Lacazette if they came along, and almost being encouraged to go and find another club if they could find somebody that would take on his salary, which was obviously quite significant at Arsenal. Now, Lacazette, to be honest, is very professional and seems to have got his head down. He's working hard. They've got no issues with him right now. But he is at that stage of his career where they're not going to dish out a long-term contract. I think Mesut Ozil's burned any chance of any player getting that kind of deal and that commitment once they get to a certain stage of their career. So that's something they're going to have to deal with for a few years, the fallout from that. But Lacazette, clearly still got the talent, but I think it makes sense that he'll have his ears and eyes open now to what other challenges might be out there, because there will be some clubs across Europe that are desperate for a striker with the kind of pedigree and talent that he's got, and will be willing to pay the kind of money he'll be looking for, and perhaps even a 3-year deal. He's not that old, so it is plausible that he could get a 3-year deal. I think we'll have to wait and see. Arsenal have to be careful, though. They have to have a plan in place to know that they've got a succession plan to this. They don't want to be left short of options, because Lacazette is a very good option for them to call upon.
Yeah, as you said, looking at Arsenal, if Lacazette does leave next summer, Eddie Nketiah also possibly leaving when his contract expires as well. So could be 2 new strikers needed for Arsenal come next season if they are to be challenging again and improving the squad under Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, exactly that. And this is where they've got to be careful. And look, their recruitment was good last time around. I was pretty sceptical about it. I wasn't sure, what exactly they were trying to achieve. Like I could see the vision of wanting players that were going to be good over a period of time. But I was like, but what about here and now? And is this season, are you going to have enough? But the way things have turned around in the last 10 games with them being unbeaten, clearly Arteta's got his pieces in place and he's happy with the way things are heading. So, trust the process, I guess, at this point, because the way that things have moved forward in the past 6 months have definitely been a positive for Arsenal. There's optimism there. Very difficult game at the weekend coming up against Liverpool. But actually, whereas in the past couple of years, you'd have been fearing the worst for a trip like that, I think Arsenal fans can be reasonably confident that they can go there and perhaps even get something out of it.
Yeah, as you said, Arsenal's summer recruitment was questioned, but all of those signings seem to be coming good. So let's see if they can get it right with Lacazette's future over the next few months as well. And we'll see where Lacazette is playing his football next season. Just switching our attentions quickly to the EFL. It's been another bad week for Derby County, as they've been deducted a further 9 points after admitting breaches of EFL accounting rules. So they were docked 12 points in September for going into administration. They're now on -3 points, 18 points adrift of safety, almost certain to be relegated to League One, Dean. Been a real sorry tale of affairs for Derby, but to the credit of Wayne Rooney, he's stuck in there and he's promised to stay and fight and everything else. Do you still think he'll stay in League One next season?
I'm not sure about next season. I mean, I give him credit for staying now. And I think, to be honest, he's kind of got a free hit at this point. He's been doing well. I think he's probably done better than people would have expected he would have done. I think probably his focus has been better than a lot of people would have expected. He's shown that he is very willing to work hard and make a success of his managerial career. And what a baptism of fire, really, when it's come to like getting your feet under the table and understanding what it's all about. He's faced challenges that some managers with like 10, 15 years of experience wouldn't have come across. So he's learning the hard way, but maybe that's the way he likes it, to be honest. I mean, it's not like he had it easy as a kid, like coming up. He forced his way into professional football at such an early age. He's doing the same in management. And part of him's probably relishing the challenge. Like, he's not expected to stay up, of course. It's almost impossible that they would do that. Having a pretty good season considering. And now it's all about him keep going until another job offer comes along, basically. I don't think he's going to accept managing in League One, especially in these circumstances. But his CV is improving with every point he picks up at the moment. And I know that, well, there are definitely other EFL clubs starting to look towards him as options if they do change manager. So I don't think it'll be too far in the distant future, actually, that Wayne Rooney will have a decision to make over whether he stays or actually whether he has to say, look, I need to take another job now.
Yeah, there's no doubting Rooney's character, his fighting spirit for sticking with Derby despite all the issues off the pitch. It's been out of his hands. He's tried to do his best with Derby, and I think he's done himself no harm at all with the job he's done at Pride Park so far. So, as you said, if jobs do become available, he might be fighting it out with his ex-England teammate Frank Lampard for those managerial jobs going forward. But yeah, just maybe it's us getting old, Dean. It's Wayne Rooney management, Steven Gerrard in management, Frank Lampard looking to get
No.
back into our management. It's the golden generation of England taking charge of these clubs. So exciting times ahead to see all these legends of the Premier League hopefully starting their careers in management as well. But yeah, that's all to come in the future. And that's us here for another week on Touchline Talk. We'll be back next week for the latest news and insight on all the latest news and gossip in the world of football.